Okay, what do you say we get started again? I got notes everywhere again. I'll give you a couple minutes if everyone wants to grab some goodies and take your seat, and we'll start, keep going. We will continue on with the reading. I can find where I am here. I'm sorry?
You want us all to sit down again?
Oh, well, you don't have to sit, but as long as you can listen from wherever you are, that's fine. Okay, we're going to continue on. We are back on the road. And let me just see. John, are you here? Jon Labrousse is up next. Oh, yeah, he's here. Okay. Jon Labrousse is going to be reading next. Jon is one of our panel members who helped with putting this event together and with the poetry selection process for the book. Veteran of the Eugene Poetry Slam, Jon Labrousse has performed on almost every stage in Eugene. When he's not teaching middle school, you can find him on a bicycle and or in the woods, most likely with his 2 children. Jon.
So I read last Tuesday. Not a drop of rain fell the whole heavily clouded 2-mile walk to the bakery where I was bound to meet you at 9 for breakfast, pastries, and coffee, after empty weeks of not seeing you. Who knew where the day would lead after we got talking about, well, everything, but especially adventure, something we often seek together, which is why I carried that enormous umbrella the whole damned way. First of all, as a totem to hold back the rain, but also just in case. After breakfast by the fire in that hideaway place, we drove roundabout town in your beat-up Subaru with the burnt-out brake light, the car whose timing belt you had replaced with your own 2 hands, my heroine, to negotiate the best approach to your favorite tree in town. We sat through 3 eventually green turn signals, watching it partake of the rain until the honking behind us drove us back into the through lane in search of a parking place near the river, just off campus. We ended up parking behind that Thai place off Franklin under a 2-hour sign with just an hour before we had to work the lunch shift across town at another Thai place, which wasn't ironic at all. It just meant we didn't have much time. You stepped out of the car and lifted your face to the rain, unworried about ruining your hair or your who needs makeup. So you'd walk closer to me. I did the chivalrous thing and unleashed my ginormous blue umbrella with its fashionable yellow panels. The thing was like a house. It shielded us not just from the rain, but passers-by. And when we settled into one of the bench nooks on the footbridge over the Willamette, I felt utterly alone with you and the mated ducks we watched splash landing on the swollen river over and over again. A couple's game they were playing, like dominoes. There were small, calm pools in the rocks where other duck couples had settled, water rushing in rapids around them. The hour boiled down to 60 seconds. Back at your place, after racing across town, I waited on the front stoop while you changed, refrained from telling you how beautiful you were, and had been all day long, when you emerged from the hallway 5 minutes before your shift, wanting to play hostess, show me the house. I refused then, but I still want to be where you live. We drove far too slowly down 28th, but made it to the restaurant on time for your shift and body hugged goodbye under the overhang at the back door for what felt like an hour, but was definitely more. When you called me minutes later, I was wandering back streets home, wishing I had kissed you so much better than that pulling away from the hug, polite smooch at the corners thing. Kissed how I love your company, kissed until we disappeared into each other like chocolate milk. Wished I could do just that part, that last part over when you called. Hello? Work shift canceled, you were already on your way to the deli where we met for lunch. You grabbed me by the raincoat and kissed me hello hard on the lips before we went inside so we wouldn't have to wait for goodbye.
Thank you very much, Jon. Gosh, I love that poem. Let's see. Janine Margiota, are you here? She didn't make it. Okay, so she wasn't sure how she felt about reading. She's never read in front of anybody before, and I thought she was going to be here, but she's not. So we have Janine's poem, which probably needs to be read from the woman's point of view. She actually has two in here. Quentin, what do you think? Would you be willing to read something impromptu? Yeah? Oh, Quentin Hallett was going to read one of Janine's poems. I'll let her pick whichever one she wants to read. And it's either the haikus or the wild poppy. Thank you very much, Quentin. Oh, tell us a little bit about yourself. For those of us who don't know.
I'm Quentin Hallett. I live in 25 miles from Eugene, but I do spend a lot of time in this library. And I think this is a wonderful celebration. And I'm very proud to be in the community with all of you, all. I'll read the haiku. Hendricks Park. Mating dragonflies circling into the wind like a boomerang. Inside, 7 months of rain, jigsaw puzzles sold out, Eugene grows green. Rose gardens, early afternoon, in lemony light, I slept leaning on a curb. Shrub.
Didn't you rehearse?
Rose gardens.
Somebody else.
Early afternoon, in lemony light, I slept leaning on a shrub. Albertson's parking lot. High on the wire, medley of blackbirds, mothers, string of black pearls. Fern Ridge rest stop. Driving, daydreaming, flock of blackbirds disoriented, a Hitchcock movie.
Thank you so much, Quentin, for doing that for us. That was very lovely. Let's see, where are we here? Paul McCartney.
Oh, wow.
Paul couldn't be with us today. Paul Stephen McCartney. Let's see, I think I asked Eric. Eric Miller is going to read his poem for him. Paul McCartney, the great-grandson of a Scottish coal miner and a German farmer, is a retired school teacher with 72 years on Earth and 45 of them in Eugene. He's a linguist and a geographer with 2 teens still living at home who are the sun and the moon of my life. And Eric Mueller has graciously said that he will read for Paul. So thank you, Eric. And tell us a little bit about yourself for those of us who don't know.
I can do that. Stephen is typecasting here. I'm in the same decade as Paul Stephen, and I've written sonnets, maybe 4, and if I read my Roman numbers right, this one is 107, 307. 307?
Yeah.
307. Oh my gosh. So there's an overlap there, and I've lived 26 years in Eugene, not counting the school years. Eugene. The sun burns through the fog upon the hill, the mist-bound firs splash color to the sky. A droplet casts a rainbow from my sill as blackbirds from the lawn their breakfast pry. The warmth of morning sun rides on the breeze. The deer devours a rose just up the street. A squirrel chirps his greeting from the trees upon a misty morning so complete. The sound of traffic rises from below. A distant horn belies the lush terrain. Commuters watch a crane who's swooping low to fish the ponds where nighttime mists have lain. Your fringes leave us glimpses of the wild, while city lights delight the modern child.
Thank Thank you very much for that, Eric. Wonderful sonnet. Okay, next we have Barbara Ann Newman, and Barbara can't be with us today because she lives in Sweden. But she has asked our wonderful co-publisher, Pat Edwards, to read her poem for her, and Pat's going to do that. And I'll give you a little bio for each of them. Barbara Ann Newman is a retired expatriate living abroad in Orsa, Sweden, and travels as often as possible to visit a dear friend living in Eugene. She has had several poems published in Groundwaters magazine in the past year. And Pat Edwards, who we all know, is the managing editor of Groundwaters magazine and the author of From Sawdust and Cider to Wine, the second of 2 books on the history of Lorain, Oregon, that she researched and has written. Her priorities, however, will always center around her family and home.
I told Barbara I hoped I could do her poem justice, but we'll see how we can do it here. It's called Now Boarding. I proceed quietly in queue to the plane's cabin door. My new life will soon take off. New York to Oregon, all my dreams are tightly packed in assorted luggage, contained in the plane's cargo compartment after searching the U.S. for the perfect place to roost. I finally decided it must be Oregon. Seeking diversity in all forms of life and cultures, I looked for an historic city built by rugged pioneers, those that could forge a life hammered by reason. It had to be a small town residing within a city that removes waste with more than one sort of recycling bin, a city that feels like a village. A grid where all cultures convene, all faiths that live together and look forward to assembling in peace, weather that never gets too cold for too long, and a fall that reveals all of her colors. Mighty rivers that roar through the heart of the city and walkways that consider the needs of all ages. Being able to hear all of nature's songs above the sound of human congestion, a place where small farms are invited to share and sell at Saturday's market. Please fasten your seatbelts for descent into... With Mount Hood and her sisters as my window's backdrop, we slow our descent over a cratered valley within an eagle's eye view of the Pacific Ocean. I can almost smell the sweetness of the air from the fern and old-growth forests. After a soft and effortless landing, we approach our arrival gate. The cabin doors open to reveal her deep corridor. Standing with hat in hand, a gate agent beams a toothy smile. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome to Eugene.
Thank you very much, Pat, for that wonderful reading. Okay, Cameron Parker. I first met Cameron this past July when he attended our poetry workshop, and a wonderful new poet. I don't know if he's a new poet, but he's a wonderful poet. Cameron Parker is a writer, artist, and founder of the Watercourse Journal at watercoursejournal.com. He lives and works in the Willamette Valley, Oregon, with his wife and 3 sons. Cameron?
Thank you, Stephen. This next poem is with that guy up there. I was at Tsunami for a book reading, and this just kind of came to me while we were waiting for the author to get up, on the stage and do his thing. So just kind of a little thought. So here it goes, and it is called Tsunami. A dying breed that's shining bright. It's where we chill at night. Rough hewn boards these timbers truss. Antique gratis, that's right. Analog rage in this digital age. Chi and verse backdrop the stage. Lick your fingers, turn the page. Used Bookstore Score, Mary, Ferlinghetti, A Proctal Reading at Tsunami. Pick shelf print is what we get. Hometown respect from this old town gent. Thank you.
As you can see, tsunami is popular around here. I'll be talking a little more about that myself later here. Okay, next up is Eileen Dawson Peterson. And Ms. Peterson has been writing poetry since 1948 and was first published in Young America Sings and Songs of Youth anthologies in 1953. Eileen has since appeared in Denali, Lutheran Journal, South Dakota Magazine, Advocate, and other publications. She has lived in Eugene since 1952. Eileen?
This poem came out of a writing workshop at an OPA conference on repetition in poetry. Our grandmothers told the stories of their grandmothers of sod houses built in a lonely prairie at the end of a long trail, of cooking gathered berries and roots and harvested grains over open fires in sodded fire pits. We mourn the loss of the oral tales to the reading of books of other stories, and to the modern magic of movies and television. We mourn the loss of our own story. But our history is there, among our fractured families, in bits and pieces, scattered and forgotten, yet we feel we know it, and know we could tell it again if we could but call forth that distant past from our buried genetic memory. Today, we pitch our domed tents in a forest campsite, tell ghost stories, sing songs, share bits of memories we suddenly remember from grandmother's tales, and feel again the old magic of storytelling. We cook a huckleberry cobbler, perhaps grandmother's recipe, made with berries we picked ourselves along the hiking trail, bake it in a Dutch oven over an open campfire in a sodded fire pit. Our grandmothers watching over our shoulders, perhaps.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Eileen. Okay, up next is Jean Marie Purcell. Jean was also a member of my panel for the summer reading series workshop and poetry showcase in July. And boy, we had a lot of fun doing that. Jean Marie used to teach kids and is currently trying her hand at playwriting. She says, "I'm a perpetual dieter."
That explains my brattish outburst that I was thought that Roy T. Johnston and I were being overlooked. But I can see we're not, and I don't really care that much. I mean, I don't take it that seriously. Okay, this is like a list poem. It appeared, Eugene, it appeared on the top 10, on the list of top 10 towns. If we still had town criers doing their rounds, they'd be touting it as a great place to live, despite the grief grass seed pollen may give. We've an array of art forms up the wazoo. A Bach festival, tsunami slams, the bijou, the graphic art galleries, plus the Schnitzler, to Kathmandu, Nepal, a twin city sister. Most nights you can pop in to see a live play at the Liebrig, VLT, Hult, or Cabaret. Number 1 on the list of cities that are green, Saturday market will sell you a fresh string bean. A fine college and top university can add to what you learned at your mama's knee. The whole town turns to bright yellow and green when a big sports event grabs the awesome scene. Catch the Eugene Celebrations Pet Parade, or some fancy type brew that beats lemonade. Pick up the Eugene Weekly free on Thursday. A ski resort's less than a day's drive away. Music clubs that rock can be heard for miles. This burg often hosts Olympic-style trials, is where cyclists are kings and Nike has a role, and was once aptly known as Skinner's Mudhole. The city's that's named after Skinner, Eugene, just like New York, has its own magazine.
Thank you, Jean. Okay, up next we have Rachel Rich. Rachel's bio is weaving together micro with macro. Rachel Rich draws images from nature, travel, and relationships. Her work appears in Groundwaters as well as the chapbooks Payne's Gray and Shadow Lines, available at Tsunami Books. Rachel?
I'm pleased to be here today and glad to see so many friendly faces. I wanted to give some credit to not only Joan Dobby, who was a poetry workshop leader for me and a source for a couple of these poems, and also to Bob Kenyon, who runs a creative writing workshop at the Campbell Center. So we can't overlook all these wonderful venues, and I see so many different circles out here. It's great. This one's entitled The Ghost of Patchouli Past. And it was written after standing in a hallway outside of a Eugene restaurant, or near a Eugene restaurant. What is that scent reminding me of Mama's home fried truck stop? Tie-dye t-shirts, long hair, Birkenstocks with wool socks, velvet vests trimmed with tiny mirrors, wrapped skirts from India, and bare feet with ankle bracelets. I could even smell buckwheat pancakes with organic maple syrup. Alonzo wears bloomers and fez, while I'm in my dashiki. Our fiddle duets waft over the crowd as we play for breakfast and tips. That's strong coffee, man.
Very nice. Thank you, Rachel. I love the way you read. Okay, let's see. Jenny Root is next, and Jenny could not be with us today, and she asked me if I would read her poem for her when we were doing Catherine Riedl's reading at Tsunami a while back. So I consented. I hope I can do it justice, and let me give you Jenny's bio. Jenny Root has published poems in several literary journals, including Basalt, Windfall, Hipfish, and Fault Lines, and work is forthcoming in Cloudbank and Edge. Her work is anthologized in What the River Brings and New Poets of the American West. And Jenny's poem is titled, Aphrodite Has Had It. Up to here with all the skinny girls boosting their cleavage and showing off, as if Zeus and the others need any more encouragement. No, the Queen of Love isn't getting enough lately. Ares always marshaling the boys at Cerbuu and Hephaestus blacksmithing for Ninkasi, so she's as green-eyed as Hera when Psyche saunters by on the downtown mall. Ripped fishnets under short shorts, black leather bustier, and gobs of dark makeup. All of 13, the goddess thinks, and flies to her son Eros' cabin in the high Cascades. She tells him to fix it with his arrows, so the girl falls for the next droopy drawer, dreadlocked wannabe Rasta that shambled by, showered or not. Eros, he's no mama's boy. Look, Venus, he drawls, pissing her off with her Roman name. You're totally out of touch up there in the South Hills. Down on Blair, girls like that are all over the place. She's just trying to fit in, pretty as she is. An angry gull, Aphrodite beats her wings and screams, I'll show that floozy pretty. But Eros cuts her off. Ma, don't worry, dudes don't pay attention. They're working their Game Boys like we used to goof around with those Olympic rings Hef always made. Listen, I'm not shooting any arrows. You're still the prettiest goddess in town. Such a crooner, and she almost buys it on her way back to Skyline Boulevard. But Aphrodite's no loser. She banks left and heads for the mall. She knows her devious back-talking god of a son has packed his quiver and flown to Eugene, thinking that haughty Psyche might still be around. Aphrodite will always ensure Eros shoots his arrows right. I like it too. Okay, up next is Janice Rubin. Janice Rubin is a poet, counselor, and educator. Her chapbook, Transcending Damnation Creek Trail and Other Poems, was published by Flutter Press in 2010. Janice Rubin.
I want to thank everyone for coming out today, and thanks Stephen and the editors and poets for this beautiful anthology. I'm going to read out of my chapbook because the print is just a little bit bigger. The first line is, I heard you planted trees for a living once. And I think if we've lived in Eugene for a while, we probably all know somebody who planted trees at one time. Plum wine. I heard you planted trees for a living once, slowly paying off the old house on 7th Street. Paint peeled off the door, bare boards. That night, the guitar in your hands, jamming with a reggae woman on stage at the Coffee Bean. Your offering was plum wine, learning riffs, trading them for plum blossoms. Now I'm lying on the grassy hill, looking up. Clouds move apart in the sky. The sun warms my face as I think about that evening. Your voice a little raspy. An era has ended.
Okay, thank you, Janice. Jamila Spain, are you here? Oh, yes, you are. That's right. Okay. Jamila Nurjahan Spain, is that right? Okay, loves words, movement, and spirituality in all forms. She is deeply grateful to the many wonderful friends in her life and to the natural world for being a continual source of comfort and guidance. Please give a warm welcome to Jamila.
Before I read, I'm just going to put it out there that I'm looking for a writers group. I was part of the Young Writers Association for a number of years, but I've outgrown that, and I'm looking to find a group of poets to write with. So if you are part of something like that, come find me after this. I'd love to talk. So my poem is titled Northwestern. I sit and wait beside the bronze statue of Eugene Skinner, founder of this town, drunk on words and half a plastic glass of red wine. His profile is pensive, his boots heavy, wide-brimmed hat in hand. The air thick with an afterglow of rain. Damp trails wind down from my pen into northwestern earth.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Jamila. Okay, next is Anita Sullivan. And Anita is sorry that she cannot be with us today. She is out celebrating her birthday, and good for her. She is honored that Tim Vollum will read her poem. Anita Sullivan is a retired piano tuner who has published a couple of poetry collections with local publishers, Trap Rock Books and Airlie Press, and is active in the Eugene Springfield literary community. And then I'll read Tim's biography when he comes up to read his work. But I would like to point out that Tim Vollum and Anita Sullivan are the hosts of the Lane Literary Guild's Windfall Series, which takes place in this room on the third Tuesday of each month. It is a wonderful series, so please come back and check it out. Okay.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and you beat me to the punch. I was going to mention that, but thanks for doing it. I certainly see a lot of familiar faces and some unfamiliar ones too, so thanks everybody for being here, and thanks to the library, and thanks to Stephen and all the staff that put this event together and the wonderful publication. I know I'm repeating what others have said, but I do appreciate all of the effort. Tony Henry's poem was about crows. I'll bet lots of us have written poems about crows if we live in Eugene. Anita's got a poem, it's kind of a study in black and white. It's about crows and about gulls. And it's called Gulls and Crows. All along the bike paths of our town, crows lord around in trees, making caustic comments we sort of understand, or they roll majestically through open skies, and we assume they're in charge of certain things. Once, they were part of a very old story, spoken slowly, chanted slowly, as a song in winter and rain for an audience who really knew its birds. But I want to tell you something new about the story. The crows in this town are more numerous than the gulls. The gulls in this town are larger than the crows. Come with me and stand by a field between the middle school and the mill race. Watch how the gulls waddle in scads like ducks. These gulls are amassing for a reason. Our parks belong to the crows, but meanwhile the gulls are staking out the lesser fields. For months, maybe longer, they've been passing themselves off as somewhat overweight pigeons. Sure, they look pale, sluggish, and harmless, especially to the crows, who probably think they are pigeons. But lately, there are more and more and more of them about. Something is cooking. A war of turf and claw, of wing and craw. Any day now they'll be out on the track field massing in rows for the battle of the gulls and crows, an ancient contest to be reenacted in our very city. Among our fields and streams, our sidewalks and trees, the pigeons are selling tickets already.
Nicely done, Tim. Did everybody that has the book notice Diane's bird graphic with that one? It looks really nice in there. Okay, where are we? Oh yes, Nicole Taylor. Nicole is an artist, a hiker, a poetry note taker, a sketcher, a volunteer, and a dancer, formerly in Salem's Danceability. She has been accepted at several print and online publications, and she blogs at a poetess anthology blogspot.com. Please welcome Nicole.
I wrote a few poems about walking the Whitaker garden tour This is Garden 1 on a garden tour. Katsura trees, Asian pears, older plum plants, and an atoll of blueberry bushes, purple waving foxgloves, and violet pansy, and a futon resting on the back deck. Purple was blowing, inflecting an art skirt, blouse, and plants. Purple is the color of wit, intelligence, knowledge, devotion, and a common color of the day, and the Katsura tree. A giant beach in late June, a garden tour of the Mayor's Garden and the Whitaker District, the Zimbabwe calabash resonator Deze hums. Thrice is from the local musicians Jerome and Joel, sitting under the big English beach, and these pipers on an amplifier, a resonator, a rhythm instrument follows us. Garden visitors out on the path from the mayor's home on this tour. Ferns and starts from vegetable cages surround the welcoming knotted beach, a good place for summer music, reading as the name derived from several languages, book in German, in Swedish, in the name of the word book, and Bach in Old English, and Bach in Old Norse. This beach spans 3 neighbors' homes and 3 planting zones. Smoky hums welcome their use of smoky beers, cheeses, and some drum making from the beach, as this is a drum gourd is a thumb drum in a gourd.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Charles Tillman, you're not here, are you, Charles? Where is Charles today? He's hiding out somewhere. I thought he was going to be here, but Jon Labrousse has graciously consented to read Charles's poem for him. And I'll just say this about Charles. Charles Tillman was raised in Charleston, South Carolina, and Chicago, educated at red brick universities and on city streets. Charles was married on a Kauai beach in 2011 and is a loving grandfather of 5 free spirits.
Actually really glad that I get to read Charles' poem. I've known Charles for quite a while. I actually, when I first moved back to Eugene 10 years ago, he was running an open mic featured poet reading thing. He's, as we all know, all of us who know Charles, he's been a champion of poetry forever, and he's just really a terrific guy. He gave me my first feature gig in this town 10 years ago, and just has been a friend since. He's really a terrific man. So this is Eugene on a thin clouded night. Exiting the revolving doors of the mall empty-handed, she's drawn off course by flute notes curling inside her dried stems of hope. Long notes pulling slow as the Willamette's current. Bats flicking through park trees, the bones of her past reaches ready for a kiln. She imagines her soul as a vase again waiting for rose stems. Sounds from current and traffic pyramid in his soul as he stands midway on the pedestrian bridge with various characters waiting for moonrise. Another long note requiems down among the cairns built in shallows on a too hot day, his flute singing to a river and those long-faced into the years of sifting through loss. Moon rising, a gray-blue halo of the centrifuge of this thin clouded night. Gray-blue glints riding the wave crests like petals rippling into the ocean as the fog mare canters in on the waves. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you, John and Charles. For those of you who don't know, Charles also hosts the third Saturday reading series at Tsunami Books. And coming up this month, on October 20th, on the third Saturday reading series, will be Laura LaHue, who is with us today, and Lena Heckman-Ayers from Seattle. From Seattle. So if you haven't been to the third Saturday reading series at Tsunami, it's a lot of fun. So come on down. That's at 5 p.m. on October 20th. Okay, where are we here? Susan Twite-Alexander. I think Susan is not with us, right?
Suzanne.
Oh, Suzanne, I'm sorry, you are here. What am I saying? Don't mind me. I'm still a little nervous, even though it's late in the day. Okay, Suzanne Twite-Alexander. Suzanne has lived in Eugene since 1989 after 25 years of living in Trinity County in Northern California, where her 3 children were born. An avid hiker, photographer, and occasional participant in 5Ks, she has recently published her first book of poems, Being. Please welcome Suzanne.
I'm being thankful that my name doesn't start with X, Y, or Z. I'd be here a lot longer waiting, huh? Grounded. Bark grew on trees before I moved to Eugene. In Eugene, bark grows in people's yards, a ground cover shredded onto black plastic. It grows in landscaping trucks that bend along the streets. It grows in piles along trails to be, and it grows beneath the feet of runners along the Amazon Canal. Runners who run a winding mile around and around and around. Summer bark dust stains their shoes, puffs up behind each pounding foot, fills the lungs of the next, around and around and around. In winter, the trail squishes. Winter to spring, and slowly camas lilies rise blue around and around. But they bloom unseen, and the runners miss the totem pole held by a rope near the 3rd quarter-mile marker. And the runners miss the mallards courting on the water. And the runners miss the green heron cruising, and the blue heron stalking, and the crows flying to roost in the ash grove at dusk. The runners stop watching, sweat watching, breath watching, muscle stretching, bark watching around.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. I'm sure many of us can relate to that bark.
Yes.
Okay, Tim Vollum. So Tim's bio is, Tim Vollum writes poems from diversity and from necessity. He has been published in the English Journal, Tiger's Eye, and Carapace, and has a poem recently published in Tribute to Orpheus. Please welcome Tim back.
Thanks once again, Stephen, and it is a great pleasure to read twice here this afternoon. And I have to admit or acknowledge that Stephen's got his timing right down to the wire. Look at this, it's almost 4 and there's only one more reader, and I'm delighted to come before John Whitty, who will finish us up. And, you know, the lady that was before me said, well, she was glad it wasn't, you know, W, X, Y, or Z, but she was close to the end. Jean Marie Purcell beat me to the punch there with her reference to Skinner's Mud Hole. 150 years, yeah? That's pretty amazing. I do wish that, like the metropolis of Lakeview, Oregon, down there in the Great Basin, less than 3,000 souls, we had as many old pioneer brick buildings as they still do. But blame it on urban renewal. What can you do? We do have a replica of Eugene Skinner outside the library, and he's well rubbed from lots of affectionate rubbings. And what I remember quite with great pleasure is that on Christmas Day one year, I don't know, a few years ago, there sat Eugene with a little woolen toque on his head, looking like some kind of garden elf, you know. So, this one's called Everyone's an Artist, and it doesn't have a dedication, but if it did, certainly this would be for our wonderful mayor right here in River City, Kitty Piercy. Graffiti then all over Eugene, on alleyway fences, on the backside of industrial buildings, here and, no surprise, there. But it's all relative, for upon entering Milan by bus, graffiti is spray-canned everywhere to the height of one's shoulders upon all the storefront buildings. And check out the railway into Frankfurt's city center via the U-Bahn, or especially the local U-Drei. Graffiti, all along the route, suburban to urban, and again, it's as high as the spray can reach, signaling the disaffection of youth, the need to say in so many puffs that the young Kilroys were here. But then, amble down to Eugene's Whitaker neighborhood along the Union Pacific tracks and find a cement block wall just dedicated to the artists who may never have even heard of Banksy or his mad French acolyte. So youngsters, paint your visions upon that wall, make your mark, and proclaim your artistry in broad daylight or evening's tranquil glow in an array of hues. It's there for the taking, that public space, an alternative to the underpass along the slough, where a dedicated citizen blanks over all your work in shades of battleship gray, a true Republican who works with donated paint in all weathers. Eugene's dedicated space along the railroad tracks is a democratic invitation to make one's art with no judgment from the elders, except to say, well, maybe that cerulean blue could have profited from a touch of green, or that filigree there, I don't know, it needs some understated orange. And meanwhile, all those freight cars roaring through with all their signal statements expressed but for an eye blink, they're so ephemeral, while you stand grounded here in Eugene with your art for all the ages.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Tim, for that wonderful imagery. And as Tim said, Jon Whitty is going to finish it up for us. So what a very nice way for us to end this wonderful reading with, last but certainly not least, Jon Whitty, professor and poetry and literary professor at the U of O. John's bio that he put in the book is, Jon Whitty is the author of 3 poetry collections, including Second Nature, selected by Linda Beards for the Pacific Northwest Poetry Series of the University of Washington Press. The recipient of numerous fellowships and awards, Whitty lives with his family in Eugene, Oregon, where he teaches eco-poetry and literature courses at the University of Oregon. Please welcome Jon Whitty.
Well, I'm back. And an honor to be finishing this off, although I realize it's an accident of the alphabet. This poem that I'm going to read was inspired by a mistake, a misperception. And oftentimes we, when we misunderstand something, we tend to say, I got that wrong, so you just go on. Not noticing that oftentimes that misperception is the most interesting, and it's really the most, holds the most potential. In this case, a really dear friend and neighbor, John Koftanovich, is one of the first residents of our hillside in southeast Eugene, was dying, and very old, dying of cancer. And I knew this. I knew he was in his house, and getting hospice care. And you know, his family and people nearest to him were there. And then I looked out at my road, at the road in front of our house, and I saw who I thought was John Covenant walking by. I thought, that can't be, right? That isn't possible. So that was really the basis of the poem. And a little elegy to him. What if not a flame on his head? Did you see him? Striding down the road, the deer bounding away, old Koftanovich, in such a hat, purple, scarlet, lime, or was it just the evening light? Maybe he grabbed whatever was at hand, his being cold and in a hurry, swinging his arms like a young man with pollen and flowers in his hair, orchids, dahlias. How could this be him, so serious? An engineer, he knows his struts and spans, his works, the water gurgling through the culvert under the road, a stream swerving under him through the gleaming corrugations. Who said he was passing away? Down to fluids. He was shrinking, his bedroom filling with people. Who were they? And what about his apples? And what is he doing out? And where on earth is he going in such a lavish hat? And why the smile?
Oh, right.
Thank you very much, John. What a wonderful way to finish. I would like to say a heartfelt thanks to all the poets who contributed to this wonderful celebration of Eugene and our diversity here. I think it's just a very colorful book, and you all were just so wonderful reading today. So thank you all very much. Give yourselves a hand. So, yes, look at that, it's just right on the dot, almost 4 o'clock. So we'll take like a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and have the open mic, and we'll hear some local poets read some stuff off the cuff, okay? So thank you again.